There's no denying it anymore. Something has to change after the latest embarrassing loss for the Boston Bruins.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoked B. Today is Tuesday, November 19th, and I want to thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins part of your day every day. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. Still searching for a great candidate for your company? Don't search, just match with Indeed. And the Bruins indeed may be on the verge of exploring candidates for the head coaching job after a 5-1 loss to the Columbus Blue Jackets on home ice last night. We're going to break down the storylines, stats, and signals from this one here today. Before we get into all that, a quick reminder, you can find the podcast on social media at Locked NHL Bruins, and you can find me, my hockey thoughts, dad jokes at Ian C. McLaren. And the vibe this morning is that indeed a coaching change may be on the horizon following this just inexplicable, embarrassing, awful loss to the Columbus Blue Jackets on home ice last night. Now, if you look at it from above, it may not seem as bad as things are. The Bruins are 8-9-3, below 500. Still, well, it's not really early now. They're 20 games into the season, but the Bruins are just bad in every area of the game. They can't score. They can't defend. They can't kill penalties. They can't score on the power play. And to top it all off, their struggles are no longer buffered by an elite goaltending tandem in Jeremy Swayman, who's been performing poorly, and of course, Linus Ullmark is gone. The Bruins were not the greatest defensive team last year. I've been saying this so often, but the fact that they had those two elite goaltenders playing at high levels kind of hid some of their shortcomings. Joonas Korpisalo has been playing better than Jeremy Swayman. And with the team struggling in all facets of the game, look, goaltending, defense, scoring, special teams, it's all not good right now. And at the end of the day, you need, in the great words of Michael Scott, an scapegoat, and that's likely going to be Jim Montgomery. Now, I don't 100% fault Jim Montgomery for the team's struggles. There's a great argument to be made that roster composition is at fault here as well. You have a bunch of forwards who are bottom six guys spread all up and down the lineup. You have some guys who were signed who are underperforming. You have veteran players who had career seasons last year that kind of falling back a little bit. You have other guys who have been around for a while that are not stepping up. And of course, you also have arguably your best player to date this season in Hampus Lindholm, who is on the shelf. None of it is Jim Montgomery's fault, but it's also up to him to get the most out of the roster, and that's not happening either. The body language is off. The vibes are off. The team seems to have, if not kind of tuned them out, they're not responding or rising to the challenge to kind of preserve his job. And Jim Montgomery, after last night's just atrocious effort against the Columbus Blue Jackets, said everyone goes through struggles, whether in your life or your team. That's what life is about. How do you pick yourself up? It's not how hard you fall. It's how quickly you pick yourself up, end quote. And right now, the Bruins, this is probably the lowest point they've been in quite some time. It's been a long time, I noted last night on social media, since it was just downright embarrassing to be a Boston Bruins fan. Like, coming out of the lockout, those couple years, there was like 96, 97. Things have been pretty good for the black and gold over the last 20 years, 15 years for sure. Right now, it's not great. And while they're still kind of in playoff contention, only the Pittsburgh Penguins at minus 25 and the San Jose Sharks at minus 22 have worse goal differentials than the Bruins this season, who are at minus 21. They're dead last on the power play. Their penalty kill is 25th in the NHL. And to top it all off, Jeremy Swayman, who missed all of training camp, has an .884 save percentage. And you heard, or you saw Cam Neely the other day making mention of how things have been off since the start of training camp. Obviously, Swayman missing camp didn't help anyone. That's the whole point of having training camp. And Swayman, for his part, though, says he thinks he's had enough time to adapt and get back on things. And he thinks the biggest thing that he lost out on was this group. He's really trying to be a leader in the room. He wants his play to speak for that. He wants to step up, and that's exactly what he's going to do. Not being there for training camp and having this somewhat contentious contract negotiation, did it alienate him from his teammates? Did it reflect poorly that he was so open about it when you have your captain who is very tight-lipped and won't talk about it in the media? The captain, for the record, said obviously he's not happy with the way things are going. They need to be much better in a lot of areas. Mistakes are going to happen, but they're compounding them, and it's not acceptable to continue to have the same mistakes. Special teams have to be really good to have success in this league, Marchand said. The power play has to be able to come through in big moments. Every one of them needs to be much better out there. They have to be excited about the opportunity that's ahead of them, he said. It's a privilege to be on the power play. It's not a given. They need to be much better. They need to be better than what they've been. Accountability hasn't been there in that area, and there's no excuse. They've got to get better. Now, Don Sweeney has been trying to juggle the lineup or juggle the roster a little bit lately, promoting Riley Tufte, calling up Jeffrey Viel, who fought in the first period, who had a big, huge check that almost led to another fight. The Bruins did not use that energy. And again, you can really argue here that it's a roster composition thing as well. A bunch of guys playing perhaps above what is expected of them in the lineup. Is Justin Brazeau really a top six forward in the NHL? Is Morgan Geekie? Tyler Johnson, I thought, had a great game last night for the Bruins. Perhaps he's in line for a bit of a promotion. In fact, there's an argument to be made here that Jim Montgomery can only work with the tools that he's given. Or you can say he has some shiny new toys in Lindholm, Elias, and Nikita Zadorov. You have an elite goalie in Jeremy Swayman. You have an elite defenseman, Charlie McAvoy, a high-end, one of the best forwards in the NHL, and Dave Pastrnak. There's enough there to put something together. And perhaps Jim Montgomery isn't able to get the most out of this current group. But is anybody out there who can? Like, I don't know who's coming in and turning things around when you are a bottom team in pretty much all facets of the game right now. We'll look more at the stats, the signals to take away from this game. A lot of what's going to happen moving forward depends on what the Bruins decide to do. And it's quite possible we'll get an update here on Jim Montgomery today. The Bruins are off today, no practice, no media, and they don't play again until Thursday against Utah. So today would be a great opportunity to relieve Montgomery of his duties, bring someone in, have a practice tomorrow. They do have another 2 days off coming up after Saturday's game against the Detroit Red Wings. So maybe they wait until then. But the pressure's really ramping up here, and I would not be surprised as I refresh my phone to see an announcement here sooner than later. We'll discuss the stats and signals from last night's game here as the podcast continues. We are driven by the search for better, and when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. It's to match, and you can do that most effectively with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Let's take a look at some stats from last night's game that show you just how bad things are for the Bruins at the moment. In fairness, the Bruins did have the advantage last night in terms of scoring chances, high danger chances, and shot attempts. In all situations, they had a 58.6 advantage in shot attempts, 65.5% advantage in scoring chances, and they had 18 high danger chances compared to only 8 for the Columbus Blue Jackets. That's a 69.2% advantage in terms of scoring chances. Expected goals for the Bruins last night, 2.96 compared to 1.89 for the Blue Jackets. The difference in this one was partially goaltending, as Elvis Merzlikins had a fantastic game in net for Columbus, whereas Jeremy Swayman, quite frankly, did not. Not to pin the loss solely on his shoulders, because there was some very poor defensive play in this one that led to the first goal that was a misplay from Brandon Carlo, I believe. The second goal, they let Matthew Olivier look like Mario Lemieux coming in on Swayman. And in the end, it was a .966 save percentage for Merzlikins, 29 shots for the Bruins, 28 saves, whereas our boy Swayman allowed 5 goals on 29 shots for an .828 save percentage, which is just brutal. The Bruins also allowed 2 shorthanded goals to further compound the struggles of the power play, which is just really unacceptable for any serious team in the NHL today. So while the Bruins did have the advantage in terms of the underlying numbers, and at 5-on-5, again, they had 14 high danger chances compared to only 5 for the Blue Jackets. So on paper, they really deserved to win this game, but they were unable to convert on the power play, going just 1 for 6. And while they did score that one power play goal and elevated their overall power play proficiency, They were outscored with the man advantage. They had 1 goal on 6 attempts, where the Blue Jackets scored 2 goals shorthanded. Like, just unfathomable how that is even possible. So those 2 shorthanded goals, power play inefficiency. They did kill 2 opportunities for the Blue Jackets, but when you're outscored while on the man advantage, it's not really a recipe for success. David Pastrnak, it should be noted, 0 shots on goal in last night's game. Pavel Zacha, also 0 shots on goal. So that's not going to do it from your top line players. Charlie Coyle led the way with 4, while Morgan Geekie, Justin Brazeau, Brad Marchand, and Tyler Johnson each had 3 shots apiece, as well as Charlie McAvoy from the back end. But the big stat, yes, they went 1 for 6 on the power play. They should have converted more, but they were outscored while on the power play. They shouldn't even call it the power play anymore. Let's just refer to it as the 5-on-4 advantage for the Bruins. But even that doesn't cut it because it wasn't advantageous to them at all. They were outscored, which is crazy. So, overall, the Bruins, and Tuesday is usually where we do the Atlantic Division Power Rankings. Let's take a quick look at the standings here. The Bruins still 4th in the Atlantic if you look at total points. They've got 19 points in 20 games. However, the problem is they've played a division high 20 games, and there are teams who have advantage over them in terms of point percentage or very, very close to that. The Panthers, first place, 694 point percentage. The Maple Leafs, 632. The Lightning at 594. And again, that's the percentage of points they've earned in relation to all possible points. The Bruins are below 500 now because they've got 19 points in 20 games. They've won 8 games and they've lost 12 if you include overtime and shootout losses. I don't think they've been to a shootout this season, actually. So 8 wins, 9 regulation losses, 3 overtime losses. So they're technically 8-12. The Buffalo Sabres, very close behind at 472. They're 2 points back in the Bruins with 2 games in hand. The Detroit Red Wings coughed up an opportunity to make up some ground last night, losing to San Jose in overtime. They're at 444 in terms of point percentage, and the Canadiens are at 421. If you look at goal differential, the Bruins are now dead last in the Atlantic in terms of goal differential. Just let that sink in here for a moment. Minus 21, which is worse than the Montreal Canadiens, who are minus 17. The Detroit Red Wings at minus 14. Nobody else is below 0. The Sabres are even at 0. The Senators are plus 2. Maple Leafs plus 8. Panthers are at plus 10. And the Lightning at plus 11. If you look at the Eastern Conference, I mentioned this earlier, the Bruins have the second worst goal differential in the conference, with only Pittsburgh being worse at minus 25. And Pittsburgh's kind of in the same boat. You know, they have some core players left: Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, Chris Letang. They've got Erik Karlsson on the back end. But they are also a team, obviously, in transition. And the Bruins slowly creeping down into that territory as well. And you've seen the Pittsburgh Penguins already starting to sell off a little bit. They traded Lars Eller to the Washington Capitals, and that could be something the Bruins start to do as well. Not just shaking up the coaching staff and firing Jim Montgomery and bringing in whoever, but also perhaps making some trades. And we'll look at some signals to take away from this loss last night to the Columbus Blue Jackets here as the podcast continues. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. You can run your game all season long on PrizePicks. They offer Venmo for quick and easy deposits and withdrawals into your account this season. And they put their members first that way. All withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. Today is Tuesday, which means it's Taco Tuesday over at PrizePicks. Each Tuesday, PrizePicks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. Download the PrizePicks apps today and use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. All right, so it's very, very possible that we see a Boston Bruins coaching change here within the next, couple hours, couple days, perhaps. Who are the people available? Well, the first few names that come to mind are Gerard Gallant, David Quinn, David Hackstall, perhaps, or they promote internally. Ryan Muganel, perhaps, Jay Leach. Nobody that really excites you in terms of someone who's going to come in, proven track record of success, who's going to turn things around right away. Of course, there is the former Chicago Blackhawks coach out there, but we are not entertaining that. I don't really want to see that guy coming in and coaching this team. That would be kind of a PR disaster for the Bruins, and they don't really want to go down that road, I don't think. Gerard Gallant could be a coach who grabs Boston's attention. He's got plenty of experience coaching teams with high expectations. He won the Jack Adams Award back in 2018. And yeah, he's a guy who could come in and kind of bring maybe not a heavy hand, I don't want to say, but someone who would command respect, come in and help turn things around. He's a 3-time finalist for the Jack Adams. He won in 2018 with Vegas. Of course, he was replaced by Bruce Cassidy, who eventually won the Stanley Cup, but he did get to the Cup final with Vegas in 2018. He's been to the conference finals with the Rangers in 2022. So perhaps he's a guy that they look at as an experienced guy who commands some respect. Maybe you look at Dave Hackstall. I know David Quinn was a candidate before Jim Montgomery was hired. Who knows who's going to come in here, but those are some guys that you could look at as names that jump out if they're not going to do something internal. Now, there could also be some movement in terms of players. Maybe they send a message by moving someone out. That's tricky because of no movement clauses and the like. The two guys that jump out as candidates, Trent Frederick, Morgan Geekie. These are guys who are pending free agents. Morgan Geekie is an RFA. Trent Frederick is a UFA. They're both 26 years of age, underperforming this season. So if you want to send a message, those are guys that you could potentially move out. Other guys without protection include John Beecher, Georgi Merkulov, probably not trading them. Mark Kastelik, Justin Brazeau, Cole Koepke, Tyler Johnson as well, if he wants to move on and get away from this. Andrew Peak, Parker Witherspoon, Jordan Osterley on the back end, as well as Mason Lohrei, but you're not trading him. Perhaps they try to send a message by moving Brandon Carlo or he's probably the candidate to be moved as a guy who is under contract for only 2 more seasons, whereas McAvoy, Lindholm, Zadorov have some long-term status here with this team. Jeremy Swayman, you're not trading him. Korpisalo, perhaps you look to move him to free up some cap space because he's been playing well so far. But those are the routes that the Bruins could take in terms of player movement above kind of the little bit of shuffling that they have done so far. So again, no scheduled practice or media availability for the Bruins here on Tuesday, November 19th. Wednesday, they will practice at 11, and the release said head coach Jim Montgomery and select players will be available to the media following practice. That was sent out by the team's media people. Obviously not knowing if anything's going on behind the scenes and whether or not Jim Montgomery will be let go at some point today. Please do subscribe to Locked On Boston Bruins on YouTube. When something breaks, I'll be sure to jump on with an immediate reaction, and we will go from there. But the vibes are not great. Jeremy Swayman has not been playing up to expectations. Jim Montgomery made it clear last night, again, saying that missing training camp doesn't help anyone. That's why you have training camps. He's not saying that that's the reason why he's struggling, but he's not saying that either. And he's already benched David Pastrnak. He's already made a public scene with Brad Marchand on the bench. Now he's calling out his goaltender. So he's kind of on a hot seat on thin ice at the moment. And it's certainly pointing to a change behind the bench coming up sooner than later. So yes, please do subscribe on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube so that you never miss a thing. Do check out Locked On Fantasy Hockey next so you get all the latest from Steal and Flip. They'll give you an edge over your competition this week. And we'll be back tomorrow with a fresh episode of Locked On Boston Bruins, bringing you all the latest on the black and gold, and immediate reaction videos will be posted to YouTube. Please do take care of yourselves, friends. Take care of each other. Thank you for checking out Locked On Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your favorite team every single day.